What you are about to hear is the only known record of a suppressed trial that took place in the county of Los Angeles during the weeks of July in 1969. When most people only remember the moon landing, another event took place that is, even today, forgotten. Though some evidence was found in the CBS News archives, the actual trial itself was suppressed by the Department of Justice, CBS News, and all media outlets since it took place. Much of this event has been recreated already on my YouTube channel. If you wish to learn more about what happened, please visit KCHP-TV 6 Hollywood, California. The imposter known as Alvin the Chipmunk was brought before a grand jury in March 1966 and was indicted on attempted murder charges of the band leader, Dave Seville, and the County of Los Angeles. The grand jury found enough evidence to begin the trial that was set to begin in June 1969. After the additional month of preparation by the attorney representing the imposter, Alvin, the trial began without further delay. For the record, the attorney that represented the imposter, Alvin, was a well-known attorney from New York City by the name Mr. Philip Cochran. The state attorney representing the state of California was Mr. Arthur Fitzroy. 12 jurors were chosen and 2 alternates, though some jurors were dismissed having known about the facts surrounding this case. The trial proceeded July 26, 1969, under condition that the trial would not be televised nor any news reporters be allowed to take notes. Some sketches were made of the imposter, Alvin, but these have since disappeared from the archives of the Los Angeles Times. Most of the transcript that you will hear comments from the only known records that exist at the courthouse in downtown Los Angeles. Only now after 50 years do we know all the true facts surrounding this attempted murder of the famous and well-known personality in the musical world known as Dave Seville. Just to summarize the known facts of what happened, it was assumed that Alvin the Chipmunk shot Dave Seville at the Emile Studios on Christmas Day in 1965. In the years since we have learned it was not Alvin but an imposter who attempted to shoot and kill Dave Seville. This imposter failed in his mission, was tried for attempted murder, sentenced to life at San Quentin Penitentiary, and was subsequently found murdered in 1971 in his cell. The reason the trial was suppressed, as we have since learned, was because the Department of Justice had learned of a coup from a rival record company, who wanted to monopolize the music industry for profit. This is why the attempted murder took place, to take out the primary artist of the Chipmunk music industry. Complete facts about this story are available on my channel. Please search for all relevant information. Here now is the only transcripts we could find from the Los Angeles archives in and for the city and county of Los Angeles. Some of these records are sporadically fragmented because of government suppression of these documents. Most fragments were also corroborated by the Los Angeles Times microfiche library archives also. All rights, the Hon. Judge Bobby Moore presiding. Please be seated. Bailiff, please read the charge in this case. Your Honor, case number 448231 State of California vs. Alvin, the Chipmunk. Would the accused please rise? How do you plead? Not guilty was the reply from the imposter. It is so noted in the court record. You can sit down now. Mr. Prosecutor, you can begin your opening statement at any time. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and to those witnesses to this case today, the facts will prove beyond any doubt that the individual sitting here known as Alvin the Chipmunk did deliberately and willfully attempt to murder a fellow co-worker and personal friend, Dave Seville. That he deliberately and without conscience pulled out a revolver after a confrontation and shot him at point-blank range. Not only did he shoot him at point-blank range but he shot him no less than 5 times. Your Honor, in opinion this shows willful and premeditated actions that can no less be considered deliberate murder. The state of California is ready to prove these facts to this court, to the jury, and to you, Judge Moore. With the defense care to make their opening remarks before we begin. Yes, Your Honor, this trial today is a travesty. My client is completely innocent of these charges, if not for the fact that he was incompetent at the time that he committed these acts against Dave Seville. My client, Alvin, says he does not remember anything of what happened. He doesn't even remember holding the gun when the security guards arrested him. All he remembers is seeing his friend and confidant, Dave Seville, lying on the floor with blood on his shirt. The facts will show, Your Honor, that my client is innocent of these charges and should be placed in a mental hospital for evaluation. Mr. Cochran, As the judge of this case, I can tell you right now that your client will not get any special treatment being a celebrity or anything else. This is a court of law, not a recording studio, not television show. If he expects me to show him sympathy, he is sadly mistaken. I want the jury to be told at this point in the trial, no one is to show any impartial feelings towards Alvin because of his status quo or any other special privileges they think he is entitled to. The defense attorney went up to the judge's bench and spoke to him, but we do not know what he said. The judge made one other comment that is noted in the archives. This is what he said: "Ladies and gentlemen in this courtroom, no one here is allowed to discuss this trial outside of this courtroom. Before you leave today, everyone here will be required to sign an oath of secrecy that they will not discuss it with anyone. I have been told this by the Department of Justice. If anyone objects to this, you must leave the courtroom now." There are no further stipulations. Let's begin with the questions and witnesses. The state attorney said to the judge, "Your Honor, I call Simon the Chipmunk to the stand." The bailiff called Simon to the stand and swore him in. Simon sat down in the seat, and the questions were asked. The state attorney asked Simon, "Tell us please what you saw on the day that Alvin shot Dave Seville." Simon answered, "We were getting ready to redo a segment of the song when Alvin began arguing." The state attorney asked, "Was there any malice in this discussion by Alvin?" Defense attorney objected, stating this line of questioning was leading the witness. The judge screamed at the defense attorney, "Shut up!" The state attorney asked again. Simon replied, "Yes, but whenever you spoke to Alvin, you never knew if he was mad at somebody or if he might have been in character." Your witness. The defense attorney asked Simon, "Does that mean that when you performed in the studio, you never knew what was really happening?" Simon answered, "Oh no, you knew when someone was joking, but, whenever we were performing in front of the microphone, you never knew when he was being serious." Did Alvin ever come across to you as having changed? Simon answered, "It's hard to say. We did so many of these albums together that we started to play around sometimes and you weren't sure if he were in character or not." I have no further question, Your Honor. The judge told Simon he could step down and returned to his seat. The state attorney called Theodore to the stand. After being sworn in, Mr. Fitzroy asked Theodore if Alvin had ever owned a gun. The defense attorney blurted out, "Objection, Your Honor. This has not been proved that he even had it at the time of the shooting." The judge asked Mr. Cochran to approach the bench. There was yelling and shouting, but we could not make out what was said. Mr. Cochran returned to his seat next to Alvin, and the state attorney asked Theodore to answer the question. Theodore said, "I didn't see it on him the day of the shooting and I never had noticed it, if it was even on him that day." State attorney then asked Theodore, "Did you notice any kind of personality change in Alvin at all before this happened?" Theodore then answered, "I would have to say yes, because the atmosphere we used to have in the studio was a fun and laughable exchange between the three of us and Dave. But, I would say within the past 6 months it all had changed to arguments, yelling, and self-incriminations." Your witness. The defense attorney, Mr. Cochran, asked Theodore what he noticed the most about Alvin's change in personality. Theodore answered, "He got mad a lot more often about things, even unimportant things that you wouldn't think he even cared about." The defense attorney asked him what kind of things. Theodore answered, "Things like, why is this script not complete?" He knew full well that the writers always gave us scripts that had numerous corrections that we had to do before the microphone, yet Alvin didn't seem to remember that. The defense attorney asked Theodore, "Would you say that mentally he was unstable?" The state attorney jumped up and objected to this question. The judge asked Mr. Cochran to clarify his question. Mr. Cochran, Alvin's attorney, told the judge, "Alvin's mentality at this time is very relevant to understanding his state of mind. This is why we want Theodore to answer it." Mr. Cochran, "I think this line of questioning should be asked by a trained psychologist and not someone who is not qualified." After several objections from the defense attorney, he withdrew the question. The state attorney next called Dave Seville himself to the stand. After being sworn in by the bailiff, Mr. Fitzroy asked Dave what he remembered about the final moments before Alvin shot him. Dave answered by saying, "It was totally unexpected for Alvin to be out of character, or at least that I would have thought he wasn't in character when we were performing. He started out arguing about how long it was taking to finish the album and that he did not want to keep working these late hours. I told him, "We got to do what we gotta do." Alvin just kept getting more and more agitated with me, but why he would pull out a gun still just doesn't make sense to me. The state attorney asked Dave, was this argument worse than normal ones they had together? Dave answered, "No, most times we were always in character and we didn't show any response or reaction in our faces, but, when we weren't in character you could tell it in someone's body language." Alvin did not show anything in his face or in his body language towards me that he was making a joke or anything. Your witness. The defense attorney asked Dave to clarify to the court whether or not Alvin showed any malice beyond the normal that they both had when performing before the microphone. Dave scratched his head, and said, "I don't get what you're trying to imply, but I knew he was more upset that day than he normally was. I got that much from how he spoke to me. If you need clarification of what he said, the studio did a recording of it which has been telecast on television and radio for the past 3 years." The defense attorney said to Dave, "That's not necessary." At this point in the trial, the judge asked that the recording made at the studio be played for the jury so that they could hear for themselves what Alvin sounded like and to make their own assumptions of whether he was mentally competent or incompetent, whether mad or in character, for themselves. Most jurors said that though they were not biased towards Alvin, they had already heard the recordings many times from watching it on television and they did not wish to hear it again. The judge accepted their reasoning and the trial continued. The state attorney next called a state psychiatrist to the stand. The doctor named Willard Hopkins. After being sworn in by the bailiff, the state attorney asked Dr. Hopkins what his evaluation was of Alvin. Dr. Hopkins answered, "In my professional opinion, I believe Alvin was in his right mind mentally and psychologically at the time he shot Mr. Seville. My examination of Alvin showed conclusive evidence that he was mad and extremely agitated with Mr. Seville, that he showed no signs of mental illness or incompetence." The state attorney then asked Dr. Hopkins, "Did he feel Alvin could kill someone?" Dr. Hopkins answered this question by saying, "Yes, I do." Your witness. The defense attorney asked Dr. Hopkins if he felt that Alvin's state of mind showed any signs of mental degeneration. Dr. Hopkins answered by saying, "Not after the shooting. He seemed completely within his own mind and showed no signs of mental distress or restriction of his emotions or conscience feelings." The state attorney then asked Dr. Hopkins, "Was it possible he could have been in a different state of mind before the shooting itself?" Dr. Hopkins said, "That is a possibility but I don't believe that was the case before or after. He always has felt the way he is based on what he ascertained from the questions he asked Alvin in his examination." The defense attorney said he had no other questions, so the judge excused him from the stand. The state attorney rose and said, "The state rests." The judge asked the defense attorney if he had any character witnesses or others who he wished to question. Mr. Cochran said he certainly did and wanted to begin with Alvin's mother, Abigail Chipmunk. She was sworn in by the bailiff and asked by the defense attorney to share her feelings about how Alvin had changed, personality being the main reason for this witness. She said, "Alvin had always been a good chipmunk and she never thought he'd do something like this." The defense attorney asked her to stay on the question asked and not deviate from the subject. She then said, "Yes, he used to be so loving and outspoken with her and his siblings, but had changed in character and outward interests in the past few months." The defense attorney asked her to be more specific. Alvin's mother said, "He has always been compassionate towards anyone he met and now he had become shallow, withdrawn, and closed-minded. Even she wasn't treated like she was his mother," according to her responses. The defense attorney said, "Your witness." The state attorney asked Alvin's mother if they had maybe had arguments, which made her feel this is why his personality had changed. She told the state attorney, "No, it seemed to be a progressive change over a number of months." The state attorney had no further questions, so the judge excused her from the stand. The defense attorney asked for Alvin's brother, Raymond, to take the stand. He was sworn in by the bailiff and took the stand. The defense attorney asked Raymond, "Do you and Alvin speak with each other at all?" Raymond, Alvin's brother, said, "You mean before or after the shooting?" The defense attorney said, "At any time." Alvin's brother then said, "Before the shooting, we used to be really close. Then, about 2 months ago he started getting mad about everything we did. He'd complain about anything I said about his career.